It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, we're here. We made it.
We're here. This is the very first non-afternoon version of Steelers Afternoon Drive. It needs another name. I think I'm thinking like Steelers Midnight Ride, maybe, or something like that. I don't know. We're in uncharted territory here, and I apologize. This may be the best looking episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive ever because I don't know how much of me you're going to be able to see. As we are recording this immediately after not immediately after, but after the game and my coverage of the game. So it's about 11:30 p.m. on Saturday here on Christmas Eve, as the Steelers just beat the Bengals, and I am about to leave Acrisure Stadium. So yeah, we're doing this for the first time. The holiday, I don't know, made the timing of this difficult. So we're sharing something, and we're seeing how this is going to go. But I don't know how well you're going to be able to see me throughout this version of my drive home, given the timing of everything. Yeah. So we'll do the best we can.
We'll see how it progresses. Right now, it looks very similar to, I think it was Wednesday of this past week's episode where you were driving. And it was like we literally saw it get dark as you were driving. Yes. It's pretty similar to that right now. But, Alan, we got to dive into this game because it's going to take a long time to talk about everything that happened in this one. First and foremost, man, Mason Rudolph, how happy do you have to feel for a guy like that? It is Festivus today. You mentioned, Christmas Eve Festivus. He aired some grievances out there on the football field against the Cincinnati Bengals.
Man, I didn't really, I guess I knew kind of the situation with Mason Rudolph, and I'll be honest, like, I had kind of written the guy off, like, as someone that was going to be an asset to the Steelers again. Like, it just didn't seem like it was in the cards, right, that was going to happen. And, he talked very openly about, like, wondering whether he was ever going to get another shot, wondering whether he was going to have a job in the NFL next year if he didn't, right? And, talked about, like, I'm wondering if next year I'm a quarterback or if I'm a commercial real estate agent, and, like, I think, man, that's, like, talk about some stakes, like, we talk a lot about young players, you never know when you're going to get a shot. How about a guy who's 28 and then never knows if he's going to get another one? And to get this opportunity, he said he could not sleep on Monday night before his first day as a first string quarterback in practice since 2019. Because you think about it, he played that game in 2021, but Ben practiced all week, right? So it's been like a really long time since Mason actually like took a full week of first team reps. He said he couldn't sleep the night before. He was so excited, so nervous. Talk about pressure and like the emotional aspect and the mental aspect of that for Mason Rudolph. Like, this game meant a lot for the team. And we'll talk about the team situation and where they were and all that, but just about how much that game meant for that guy in his career. I mean, he could get another contract based just on that performance worth, a couple of $1 million. Like, that's some big-time stakes for a dude to go out there and play statistically the best game of quarterback the Steelers have seen since 2018. How about that from Mason Rudolph? Nobody had that on their bingo card except for, like, two random weird guys on Twitter.
Oh, I know. I know one of them for sure from Twitter. I gave him a couple shout outs today. I felt like I had to. It was his night in the making. But everything that you just said there just makes me have a greater appreciation for what he did tonight, and again, like, just having to respect the fact that he was able to do that, and really cool moment for him too. I mean, all the chants, the Mason Rudolph chants, them playing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer a couple times, especially like, at the end of the game when he's walking onto the field to shake hands and stuff like that. Just, man, what a full circle moment for him and the city of Pittsburgh, going from, a guy that nobody wanted in the city anymore in the fan base to delivering this performance with the stakes being so high, not just for himself, but for the team.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, he even said this, I've been on the other side of that. Like, it's you can't live and die by it or you'll go crazy, but you're also like not a real human being if you don't acknowledge how good it feels. And like, man, you just, and I've said this before, but Mason has been such a professional about the entire situation about accepting his role and being a good teammate. And he made another comment tonight about like making sure he felt like he was earning his paycheck, like however that was. Whether it was like giving guys the business on the scout field, or whatever. Like he was trying to find a way to make an impact all that time, to be as prepared as he could be. And I'll tell you what, man, he looked better. Like it's not like this was just 2019 Mason Rudolph all over again. Like I thought he looked pretty good. He made good progressions. He made good reads. Like, I mean, some of his stat totals are sort of inflated by the fact that two times he threw the ball to George Pickens, who ran away from the entire defense, right? I mean, like, but still, like, I thought he was really good in this game. Like, that's not just George Pickens doing all the heavy lifting and Mason Rudolph skating by. Like, he was a very good quarterback in this game.
Yeah, there was some like honey hole shots that he was hit. There was one where he like layered the ball perfectly in between a corner and a safety on the left hash. And like, I don't know. Like, yeah, I thought there were some very impressive throws made in this one too. I would obviously have to go back and watch it. We're talking after just seeing it live, both of us. But yeah, very impressed with his performance. I wanted to ask you, because as you were talking there, it kind of made this question pop in my mind. So now Mitch Trubisky in his spot, how have you seen him, if at all, to this point, obviously very early in the process here, take to the role that he's now put in, where Mason is now the QB1 in front of him?
Yeah, it's really hard because I got to be honest, I was focused on a lot of things that were not Mitch Trubisky this week. That'll probably be something that like plays out in the long term. I think it's really easy to be. It's really easy in week one to say all the right things, right? Like, I think you expect that, especially from a guy who's a quarterback, who's well-spoken. I think that's something that has to play out over time where, like, if that's your role and if that's what you're going to do, are you still being a good teammate? Are you still doing a good job in that role weeks and months and maybe even years later? Like, I think that's a whole different level than doing it for 1 week. So I don't know that I would be able to really compare what Mitch did to what Mason has done, because I expect most players to be good teammates for a week or 2 or 3. It's when it drags on for the length of time that Rudolph's did, I think it really becomes noteworthy.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair. That just popped in my mind. And then the last thing that I have immediately about Rudolph, we could end up circling back, or maybe you have other thoughts, but I just thought about this too. Is it at all a conversation for who is the quarterback next week if Kenny Pickett is able to return for that one?
Well, I mean, I think the conversation is like, now I don't think you like. I think it was like some point last week where I was like, yeah, give me Kenny on one leg at this point. Like, I think this rules that out of the possibility where like maybe there's a situation where Kenny is cleared medically, but then you see him out there and you're like, yeah, okay, he's not really moving very well. Like, maybe you don't play that guy. Maybe you don't play Kenny if although matter what Rudolph does, Pickett is too important to this team and its future to not play him. Like, it doesn't, nothing else matters. This team isn't winning the Super Bowl. Like, you have to do your due diligence with Kenny Pickett and give him as many opportunities as you can to either sink or swim in that job. It's not helping anyone to win one more game with Mason Rudolph. And in fact, I think, like, Mike Tomlin is very steadfast that he does not care about his winning, non-losing season streak. I think that would be a really good way to prove it, too. To be like, look, I don't care if Mason is better right now. Like, we picked Kenny to be our starter for reasons that he is still our starter. And we're not going to go back on that just because Mason had one good game. We knew Mason was capable of playing well. That's why he was on the team, but we still picked Kenny Pickett as our starter.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's the same conversation we've had, like I don't remember when it was, but we had that same conversation weeks ago. It wasn't Mason, it was Mitch though, that we were talking about, obviously, and just saying, like, is it worth winning one more game in the regular season or getting, valuable reps out of seeing what Kenny Pickett is? And I'm with you though. Like, it's more about the long term than the short term here for me.
And the other thing is, I don't think that there is a single team out there that if like both of those guys were free agents next year would pick Mason Rudolph over Kenny Pickett. Like there's obviously talent and ability in Kenny Pickett that is yet to be unlocked, that the Steelers have made their job to do so, and there's no reason to give up on that just because Mason Rudolph had a good game. And you know, I like they had a real competition last year. I don't really think that they gave Mason Rudolph a fair chance of winning it. I will say that. But I also think that he was not the best quarterback. Like, you know, he was good, but it's not like Mason has been sitting there like showing up everybody else, like doing more to earn more than he's got. You know, like he has had the role that he has earned largely, even though Mitch Trubisky, when he got his chance, did not play well, and Mason Rudolph, when he got his chance, did play well. Like, that doesn't mean that Trubisky's a worse quarterback now. That just means he had some bad games and Rudolph had a good one. You can't overreact to a very small sample size here. Like, I think Rudolph could win another game if he needs to, if they want him to. I don't think that's beyond him. But no one is going into the 2024 season with Mason Rudolph as their starting quarterback, right? So it's a waste to play him if you're not.
Yeah, I agree. I just think, like, as Steelers fans, with the QB play that we have gotten for, you know, an extended period of time, when you see one that is of the caliber of this, and again, you know, 17 of 27, 290 yards, a couple touchdowns, again, largely coming on a lot of yak from George Pickens plays. The bar was just set so low that with the performance he had, I think we'd have a tendency to overreact to it.
And I'll say this also, like, do we know that Kenny Pickett couldn't have done that? I mean, he diced up those Bengals pretty good the first game. I mean, he's really only like one or two red zone plays away from having a very similar performance. And by the way, none of his wide receivers had 100 yards of yak in that game. You know, like, I don't really think what Kenny Pickett did in the last game out against the Bengals is that far removed from what Mason Rudolph did today that, like, you're talking about just throw the guy out. Like, I don't. The Steelers aren't there. They're not going to be there. You know, that they need to work on their guy, and I expect that they will if he is healthy. I do think the play of Rudolph does give you that flexibility where if Pickett is not fully healthy, doesn't look like he's really physically poised to be the kind of guy that we've seen him be, then maybe you let him wait until he is because Rudolph is playing well when you might have rushed him back if you weren't getting that kind of performance from a backup quarterback.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. And Alan, I think we should just now talk about the guy that we're talking about here with the yak, a guy that we've talked about a lot over the course of this week. What is wild about this, right? 195 receiving yards. It comes on 4 receptions, 48 and a half yards per reception tonight for George Pickens. Somebody said to me, and this is like one of the most wise things I've heard a drunk Yinzer say in a football stadium. They were like, life is about ups and downs, but it's about how you respond. And look at how George Pickens responded tonight. I was like, did I just hear somebody that's like probably blacked out, not even gonna remember saying this, say this in a football stadium right now? But
it's funny because Allen Robinson's quote to Nick Farabaugh in the locker room is almost the exact same thing. He said, like, the NFL season can be like a roller coaster, and you can't be afraid of the ups and downs. Like, you have to enjoy them and embrace them because you are not going to have perfect seasons. Like, you are going to need to overcome adversity and learn how to do it. And if you don't like roller coasters, you're not going to survive in this environment. And George did it. And, like, that is almost verbatim what Allen Robinson was talking about. Go read Nick's story. It's really, I think it's one of his best about how the Steelers got George Pickens right this week to come play this game. And I think they deserve a lot of credit for getting through to the person and finding a way to get him engaged to play this game. I think that was very important, right? It's really easy as media and as fans to have a big picture perspective about, like, hey, this guy, he seems like he's not so great. Like, do we even really want him around? Like, I think that's an easy reaction for fans and media to have, right? If you're on that team, though, I think your reaction is, this guy is not right, and we need to win a game with him this week. How do we fix it? Like, forget the big picture. How do we fix it right now? How do we get that guy engaged enough to go help us win a game in 7 days? And I think the Steelers deserve a lot of credit. And when I say the Steelers, I'm mostly talking about the guys in the locker room for getting George right and getting George in a mental state to make an impact in this game. Because I think we all could have envisioned some performance where he came out here and looked disinterested and didn't give a full effort and kind of pouted or kind of moped, and didn't look like the kind of player we've seen. I think we all probably had a piece of that vision in our head, and I think it's a huge credit to the team that they were able to find a way to not let that happen. And I think it's important to give them that credit. I also think it's important that no one ever thought George Pickens wasn't a good wide receiver, right? Like, no one ever thought that George Pickens wasn't capable of making the kind of impact on a game that he made tonight. The problems with George Pickens were about how he handled his emotions and how he gave an effort to his teammates and how he presented himself as a professional. And I got to tell you, there are no negative emotions to deal with. There is no adversity to overcome. And there is no professional concern when you catch two touchdowns at 195 yards. Everyone can respond to that situation. That situation does not require any maturity or any growth as a person. So while I think the Steelers deserve a lot of credit for getting him in a place where he was able to contribute, I don't think that those of us that were approaching this with a big picture perspective should now be here like, oh, he's fixed. Everything's great now. Don't worry about it. Just because he caught some balls. If he'd been catching the balls all along, there probably would have never been a problem. But that's not realistic. Like, that's what we just talked about. You're going to go through those time periods of adversity, and we'll really learn something about George if the next time he goes out there and has a bad game or a game where he's not a part of the offensive game plan or he does something wrong in a game. Does he do a better job of owning up for it? Does he do a better job of dealing with the negative emotions about dealing with things in a professional manner? That's when we'll really see if he actually learned anything from this week or not.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think that's a good point too. Like, that hasn't been tested yet again. Like, that's why you talked about this past week, how you would have loved to have seen just early and often Jaylen Warren running behind George Pickens and having him as the blocker outside and seeing how he responded to it. And I agree. But like, from the second play of this game where he takes it 86 yards to the house, he was the guy in the passing game. And and that's obviously fine too. And you can appreciate what he obviously did on the football field tonight. But again, the things that we were questioning weren't really things that got brought up in this game. So obviously appreciate the effort he had in contributing to this win, but it's not like the things that were being questioned all of a sudden got answered.
And, the other thing is obviously, his media availability on Tuesday was kind of a mess, right? I mean, he said a bunch of things that he probably should not have said. And his media availability after this game was only slightly less of a mess. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I really don't. I think this is one of those things that maybe is in the eye of the beholder. It is one video up on the YouTube channel if you want to go check it out. But
I haven't even seen it yet. I didn't know that he was available to the media after the game until you told me.
Yeah, so he went to the podium and he made a statement before he took questions. And his statement was great because he acknowledged saying something on Tuesday that ticked us off, speaking to the media. But he didn't apologize for it. He didn't say that he shouldn't have done it. He didn't say that he won't do it again. He just acknowledged that he ticked us off. Like, it was very matter of fact. Yeah. Like, I said some things that made you mad. And then he just moved on. It was fantastic. I don't really know I called it on Twitter. I called it a non-apology apology. Where, like, he acknowledged that it existed. And then he just said, I just want to focus on winning and being a great player. Which, okay. I mean, I guess that's a perfectly good stance to have. And then Mike DeFabo, the Athletic, near the end of the availability, asked a very good question. He asked, George, what do you feel like you learned from this week? And he said, I kept a lot of receipts. I don't know. That does not strike me as profound growth or maturity regarding this situation. Maybe other people might see it differently. I don't know. He also went on to say, I did think I learned that a lot of people just have a job to do. I don't really know what to make of that other than it feels like something the PR staff told him to say.
Yeah.
As if he was not aware that those of us in the media are doing our job before. Was that this is new news. This is totally new information to George Pickens that like people like me are in fact paid professionals to do our job. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Do they never talk to the media, Georgia? I don't know. I don't know what to make of any of that. It was certainly like if you were looking for contrition, you certainly didn't get it. Like, let's just say that.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Again, I had until we got on here right before we started recording, I didn't even know that he spoke to the media. And then you telling me that just now was the first time that I was hearing that. The receipts thing, that's very on brand for
also
him.
Put that on Instagram in an Instagram reel or whatever you call it, story.
Okay.
Said
Wow.
I kept a lot of receipts or something like that.
That's always another thing, right? Is like the players posting on social media after wins. Like, yeah, like I saw Joey Porter posted something as well about like King of the North. Yeah.
That was good, actually. I like that.
Yeah. Actually, do you have anything more about actually, I got to ask you one thing about the offense. So obviously Mason Rudolph played better, got a ton of yak from George Pickens and stuff. But when you score 34 points on offense, something the Steelers just have not done, no defensive touchdown played a role in this. Was there anything other than just those two things for this offense? Like, how did you feel about the play calling, the sequencing? Obviously, there wasn't like a 100-yard rusher in this game, but they still had the offensive output they did.
I have in my notebook the headline of a story that I've not written yet, but we'll give it away here. I think Falcon Sully bamboozled the Bengals, man. This was an awesome job by the Steelers' offensive brain trust. They knew exactly what the Bengals were doing before they did it and had an answer before the Bengals even knew what the question was in a way that I'm not sure I've seen the Steelers' offense do in a very long time. The Steelers came into the last game knowing that the Bengals were very vulnerable to the tight end. They were like, I want to say 30th. They came in the league, 30th or 31st in the league in passing yards to tight ends. They came into that game. And they just spammed Freiermuth over the middle over the entire game from the first play on. And that's what they were able to move up and down the field. Now, they didn't have red zone success with that strategy, but they were able to move the ball basically at will on this Bengals defense that has just been eaten alive by the tight end all year. The Steelers come into this game, they're like, we just beat the crap out of the Bengals with this one thing. We did it over and over again, and we know they're going to spend all week trying to take that away from us. They never threw the ball to Pat Freiermuth one time the entire game. He did not even have a target. When the Bengals sat in that cover two all last game, and they were just Freiermuth over the middle, Freiermuth over the middle, Freiermuth over the middle. Now all of a sudden, there's one-on-one opportunities on the outside. And from the second play of the game, it's George and Deontay. They already knew what the Bengals were going to do in response to the way the last game played out. They made the change before they even saw it on the field, and they beat the crap out of them again with a better game plan for the second time in a row. I do not think that the Steelers' offense has been very good under Faulkner and Sullivan, and I think on the whole, it's been worse than it was with Canada running it. But this is a second very nice butt whipping of the Cincinnati defense. Now, it's a bad defense. I think we should just say that out loud. But it was a bad defense that was not only physically beaten, but it was schematically beaten too. And I think you really got to tip your hat to the Steelers' offensive brain trust for this one.
I agree, because like from a personnel standpoint, like if you line up and beat them, okay, I could see that happening. But like Lou Anarumo is one of the best in my opinion So to out-scheme them, that I think is on a whole different level.
Yeah, I mean, they were missing DJ Reader. I think the running success with Najee Harris really was a lot because of that. The offensive line was able to. Mason still got hit a ton, but they were able to keep him from getting sacked. He was still able to get the ball out, even though he was getting hit. But man, I thought they did a great job with the play calling, with the game plan. Really, the biggest thing to me was that the game plan felt really smart, really well dialed into what they knew what was coming from the Bengals, and they just beat it up over and over again. It was awesome to see. Really, I think one of the best game plans that they've had for a defense this year, and really going back several years.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I do want to spend a little bit of time here, as we are already almost at the 26 plus minutes into this. We haven't talked about defense at all, and I do want to mention that. First off, Jake Browning, just on the surface, right? You looking, he has 335 yards, but it's going 28 of 42, a touchdown, 3 picks, took 3 sacks in this one as well, 69 QB rating. Nice for the Steelers, not nice for the Cincinnati Bengals. But Alan, in this one, I don't want to start it off with some bad news, but Elandon Roberts, another inside linebacker, going down in this one with a pec injury.
All right, well, let's start with the bad. Yeah, Erob, look, I don't know. I haven't talked to him. I don't think he had like a big sling or anything, but pec injuries are bad. Like that's, I mean, TJ missed 7 weeks with a minor one last year. Like
that's what I was saying. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, but that looks not promising, right? But I thought Miles Jack played very well. Like I thought he looked good. Boy, I tweeted the depth chart at safety before the game. I probably should have tweeted the line. Think about this. They're now down 3 starting inside linebackers. Their top 3 inside linebackers and their top 4 safeties.
Yep.
And they give up 8 points. So, I mean, look, an offense that's been doing okay, even though it hasn't had Joe Burrow. I thought they played really well up front. I thought they did a good job of impacting Browning. They made him make bad decisions, and he did it. I think if you saw that Vikings game last week, you kind of saw there were some questionable throws that were just sort of ending up in the hands of Bengals receivers, where, like, you look at the numbers, but then you look at the tape, and it's like, this guy isn't this good. Like, you could take advantage. In fact, we talked on our preview episode. I thought this was a matchup the Steelers defense could win, and then they really won it because of the interception.
You said Patrick Peterson was going to get one, by the way. So
I did. 3 interceptions, 17 points off turnovers, and really one of them was in the end zone interception where the Bengals would have kicked a field goal. So a net plus 20 swing on those plays, that's pretty much the reason that this game gets out of hand for the Steelers, right? Like, they probably would have won without them, but that's the reason why the Steelers were able to have a comfortable victory for the first time. I don't even remember. Like, it's been a really long time.
Jordan, who I went to the game with, and I were talking about it. I remember they had 2 blowout wins in 2020, like against Cleveland and against Cincinnati, and like those would be the last 2 that I can really like think of. There might have been one after that, but I don't remember if there was. So, I don't want to ask you something that like you would have to go back on the tape and watch, but Eric Rowe also had a pick in this game, and he had to start obviously with all how thin they got there. What did you think, at least on the surface, of his performance?
Well, he had the pick, which was really just thrown right to him. I'm going to give him credit for catching it. Miles Jack had one thrown right to him, and he dropped it.
That's true.
He also took a pretty bad angle on the T. Higgins touchdown. That was the one big play for the Cincinnati offense.
I didn't realize it was him.
No, it's fine. And Michael Walker had underneath coverage there, but Rowe should have been able to keep that from being a touchdown, you would hope. I would say good, especially considering that was my key matchup coming into this game, how Rowe and Shannon Sullivan were able to deal with Tyler Boyd. And even though like Higgins got him, Tyler Boyd did nothing in this game. And I really thought that he was the guy that if I was the Steelers defense, I was really worried about. I felt good about the King of the North. Apparently, that's what he's going with. Joey Porter Jr. being able to overall limit T. Higgins. I was worried about the way this sort of mishmash defense in the middle was going to deal with Tyler Boyd because he can gash you, man. He's really good, and he didn't get anything. Now Yoshivas did. Man, he's a fun player, but they really minimized Tyler Boyd. And I think Rowe and Shannon Sullivan might have had his best game as a Steeler. Those two really did a lot to minimize what Tyler Boyd brings to the table. And with no Jamar Chase, Joey locking down Higgins, if you can take away Boyd, I think you're taking away most of the passing options for the Bengals that really worry you.
Yeah, Joey Porter Jr. shadowed T. Higgins on 32 of the 40 routes that he ran. He had one reception on 2 targets for 15 yards as the nearest defender. Also, Porter has kind of been doing this, right? He shadowed the opponent's top receiver the majority of their routes now in 7 of the 11 games since becoming the starter. And
one of those games was Green Bay, which doesn't really have a top receiver.
Yeah.
So, really, it's been like almost all the time.
I was going to ask you, though, like, at least for me, I can't think of a time where the Steelers, and maybe it was just because like of the personnel that they've had, but this is typically to me something they don't really do is like having one guy shadow a top receiver, and then they're having a rookie do it now.
It's funny that it's 24 because the last guy I remember doing it was Ike Taylor.
Right.
Like
yeah.
that was the guy. Like he would do that. Since Ike, that has not really been a thing. They did it with Joe Hayden a little bit when in those years where like the other corner was just god awful. When it was like, I don't remember, Valentino Blake or whoever was, where they had a clear big bad drop off to the number 2 guy. They did it a little bit with Hayden, but for the most part, they've been a left and right team, and they're really. If Joey can clean up the penalties, he could be a Pro Bowl corner. I think that's pretty clear already.
Yeah. And see, that was more of a big picture thing. So, Alan, before we get out of here, I don't know if you have any other takeaways from this game or anything on your mind before we get out of here.
No, I mean, I think that's it. Mike Tomlin won 2 challenges. It was just one of those days. Everything went the Steelers' way.
Everything.
I mean, like, just literally everything went the Steelers' way. And it seems like we're going to get another good one here in Seattle. 2 teams are it'll be 3 weeks in a row. We're going to have 2 teams that need to win to get in the playoffs. And should be a good one.
Going to be a fun week to monitor too. Again, we brought up the quarterback stuff. Is it going to be a decision in the team's mind? I think that will be interesting to watch this week of practice. So I'm looking forward to that. Alan, tell the people where they could find you and all 55,000 stories that are going to be written from this game.
At @Saunders_PGH on X. PGH Steelers Now is a site's account, SteelersNow.com. Use promo code Allen10, 10% off. Steelers Now Plus. Derek has his dudes and duds up tonight. I'm going to have something. Nick might have something. Lots of good content over the next couple of days. You and I are going to take a couple of days off and then come back on Tuesday after Mike Tomlin talks.
Right. So we're recording this on Saturday. You guys will be watching this Sunday, Christmas Eve. So, of course, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Enjoy the time with your family, as Alan and I will both be doing. I'm Zachary Smith, PGH. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell here. Hit us in the comments. Let us know what you want us to talk about when we do come back on Tuesday. We appreciate all you guys, as we always say, every single episode. Thanks for jumping in and taking another ride with us on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.